Hey guys, Jay Young with Young Red Angus. Thank you so much for making this video a part of your day. In today's video, I'm going to cover our irrigated corn and how it went this year. It was really a disappointment as far as our yields go, and part of that was due to our weather patterns. A lot of people saw just bad yields in general from their irrigated ground in my county and the county north of us. However, the thing that hurt us the most was a mistake I made. So we'll cover that in this video, and we'll talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Not a lot of good other than learning from your mistakes, but we'll talk about the bad and the ugly.
And this is what we all feel, let's just not deny it. Something pulls and it tears in the deepest place. This is what we all know. Why must we still fight it? It's time to open our eyes and acknowledge the writing on the wall.
Today's episode is brought to you by Regen Ag Labs. Regen Ag Labs is the ag lab that we trust. Before we talk about the corn and how it went, weather patterns, mistakes, I want to talk about our kind of setup with our irrigated ground. We have 7 irrigated circles. So on those 7, there's 3 north of my house, and then we have what's called the south yard. So the south yard is a place where I can run cattle. So we have cattle at my house, and then at the south yard is just a mile south of our farm. So north of our farm, we have 3 irrigated circles, and then right around the south yard, we have 4 irrigated circles. Here at the north place, we have enough water to do full irrigation on 2 circles, or we have. There's been some reductions in how we can water, so we're going to just do full irrigation on 1 circle of corn, and then we're kicking around what we're going to do with the other 2 circles, whether it'll be cash crops or cover crops to feed cattle, or how we'll do that. At the south yard, we still, if we manage things right, we'll be able to do 2 full irrigated circles of corn, possibly. We're still hammering that out. But for the last few years, we've been able to do 2 circles north of the house, 2 circles around the south yard. A few weeks ago, I covered our Jimmy Red corn. That was on half of one of our irrigated circles. On the other half of the Jimmy Red, we did a shorter season corn after we pulled off beardless triticale bales. That corn was 187 bushels an acre, and it was our best field that we had this year. So a couple of things that would kept that down at 187 bushels an acre would be that, we pulled the beardless bales off. It stopped raining there in August, and that really kind of hurt us and it got really, really hot there in the end of August. So, I'm guessing that was the biggest contributing factor as far as that field goes. But if you think about it, that field probably should have been our lowest yielding field in general, but it was our best. I think the biggest contributing factor to why our corn was worse than that one was the mistakes I made on rotational grazing. So on the circle I'm on right now, I broke it up into 4 paddocks for the cows, and I was going to be on it for a week each, on each 30 acres of this irrigated circle with 120 cows, which I thought wasn't going to cause that much damage. As I was going around, and did the first 2 weeks, I really thought, man, we're leaving a lot of residue out there. Let's just stay 2 weeks on each of the last quadrants on this field. Looks like that mistake cost me about 15 grand on this 1 circle alone in yield loss on our corn. So let me explain. Leaving them just that extra week there caused that much more compaction. Here's a map of this field and how it yielded. Where it's green, it's yielding between 200 and 220 bushels an acre. Down here, where it's got the grosser color, is down below 150. That extra week of trying to get the extra good out of the irrigated circle and thinking it can take it, like I don't need to do rotational grazing, I can violate the regenerative agricultural principles and be fine, cost me a lot of, or cost the farm a lot of money, because you figure if it was 50 bushels an acre less than the other half of the circle, and if the whole circle would have yielded what the west half would have done, we'd have averaged over 200 bushels an acre again. And we would have been able to have another video saying, hey, you know, we're still reducing our 2 years in a row with reduced nitrogen, no phosphorus. We raised over 200 bushels an acre. Can't say that because I screwed it up. If you're wondering, or have the question going through your mind, Jay, you know better. Why did you do that? Why did you not do rotational grazing on the circle? Why didn't you, why'd you make that mistake? Well, at the time, I was having a hard time getting my pastures planned out over the winter, and I didn't think I was going to have enough. And so I just thought, man, we gotta utilize what we have. Well, I'm not making that mistake this year. I've got it set up to where we've got way more pasture than what I need, and so I'm moving the cows way quicker. It's a lot more work, but in the long run, it's going to be a lot better for our ground and for our pocketbook, because we're moving our cows and not causing huge issues of compaction. So we'll probably have another video on that, just specifically on the compaction. So that covers the irrigated circles here north of the farm and how they did. Let's hop in the Ranger, go to the south yard, and we'll cover the other 2 irrigated circles. Before I get too far ahead of myself in talking about how things went down here at the south yard, I want to bring up our irrigation system and our fertilization system. So we didn't do any phosphorus on any of our fields, and instead of doing dry nitrogen before we plant and doing our test strips and everything like we've done in the past, we bought that fertigation system, and so we were able to fertigate nitrogen onto these fields, and we put about 90 pounds of nitrogen through the pivot in doing fertigation with the nitrogen. And we also tried to do compost extract on every single pivot at least once. And so that's what our fertilization system was, or our program, as far as how much fertilizer we got out on these fields. And like I brought up, on that one field, seems like we would have raised 200 bushel corn had we just not overdid the grazing. And it's kind of the same story here on this, so we'll get into that here on the south yard. Okay guys, here we are. You see the tree row right over there, that is the south yard. Right behind me we have the irrigated circle of corn, and right in front of me we have the irrigated circle that was cover crops, where we had it ran our cattle all winter long. In a previous video, I was over here talking about how we're going to do rotational grazing, and I went through all the areas and covered what our rotational grazing patterns were going to be for this year in 2023. And so that was made around April, and then I just showed what my plans were going to be. In that video, I took you over here to these 2 irrigated circles of corn, and I pointed out how we were going to have our cows on that and move them, and how Jerry thought that was a dumb idea, and how I told him it was going to be okay because we've been doing rotational grazing and it's going to be fine. Well, I didn't move them frequently enough, and it caused enough compaction that it really hurt our yields. Now, you can clearly see it on those other fields where it was, way better bushels per acre on the east end as opposed to the west end. So you know without a shadow of a doubt that was the case. Here, I'm just assuming that because where we have huge compaction issues over there, there's a lot more pigweeds, and these fields, most of the fields had pigweeds throughout the entire field. And so, it's really, really tough to say what was the biggest factor in what we did. We might have planted our cover crops a little bit too thick. I need to probably pull our population back off our cover crops a little bit, but that's just the way it was this year with our irrigated circles. Like I'd mentioned before, a lot of people's yields were down from what they had been in the past. I will say, my neighbor, who I brought up in a past video, that where the water filtration was better on our fields than his field, he did corn on corn, and He did, I think it was 200, right at 200 on his irrigated circle. So he did a lot better than we did. It kind of just goes to show you, if you try to violate the principles of rotational grazing and think you just have cattle out there because you've been doing regenerative agriculture for a while, you're wrong, and you're going to shoot yourself in the foot like I did. And it's really, it's funny. Like like I feel embarrassed and foolish bringing this up and having to admit like this huge mistake I made, but it's like, that's what this channel is about. Like, I am dedicated to teaching regenerative agricultural principles, and if I screw up, I'm dedicated to owning it, because nobody can learn. You know, I'm not going to learn anything unless I recognize what my mistakes are and learn from them. And then my channel won't help anybody if it's fake and I'm only bringing up everything that goes right. You know, I've had past 2 years of being able to have videos talking about how great regenerative agriculture is, and raising 200 bushel corn without applying nitrogen or phosphorus, and our test strips, and just how much money we're saving with compost extract and all those good things. So if I'm going to be talking about that, how great regenerative agriculture is, I'm going to talk about it when I screw up and don't do what don't follow the principles the way I should have been following the principles. So anyway, that kind of concludes this video. I've got a lot of good stuff coming for you down the pipe, so stay viewing the channel. And thank you guys for everything you do. The people that subscribe and watch the videos mean the world to me. I love doing this, and we'll see you next week.